Martin Hooker says, I often get myself into trouble by thinking I can do DIY jobs around the house myself rather than paying to get a professional in. Have you ever been caught out thinking I can do that? Yes. Are you kidding? I have totally regularly been caught out saying I could do that. There's a moment to do it yourself, and there's a moment to hire a professional. And sometimes it's about the scope of the job, but sometimes it's just about getting older and prioritizing your time a little better. You know, when you're young, it's funny. It's like painting your house, painting the inside of your house. It's expensive. It's expensive because it's grueling work. And I used to paint houses, the interiors of houses for a living, and it's the worst job. I hated that job. I worked for people who loved it and who were excellent at it. I learned from the best people how to cut in and how to, draw the X and fill it in and paint with rollers. And, I actually can do a very, very passable job at house painting, but I don't do it anymore. I hire people to do it. And that's about resource allocation. Like, what is my time worth? And then there's the DIY jobs around the house are things like, you try and repair that section of wall, but you're not really good at laying out the spackle and it's never quite flat again. Yeah. I mean, it's like hiring movers, right? There's this point in your youth where it's always you and your friends, like my son's moving this weekend. And it's like, you call all your friends and you get everyone with a pickup truck and you kind of brute force it. And then later on, you hire movers. Actually, it has nothing to do with anything, but when my wife and I were living over on Richland Street at the edge of the Mission here, and we bought a house over in Sunnyside. And this was the first time I hired movers, but it was the very first time I hired movers, so I was super cheap about it. And I found some guys on Craigslist who did the whole move for I don't know, maybe just over $1,000, like really, really inexpensive. And these guys showed up, they were Chinese, they did not speak a word of English. So it was all a lot of, I had arranged with someone who spoke English on the email, and then the guys that showed up didn't speak at all. They were great. They actually did a great job. But there was this moment when we've loaded up the truck that they brought with all the stuff from our house on Richland, and now we're heading over to Sunnyside. And we're basically like, follow us. You follow us, right? We do sign language for follow us. And they did. And we got to our house and we unloaded and it was great. But then I had this fantasy in my head. I was like, this would be an interesting movie. Like a Buñuel film, right? Where the protagonist changes halfway through the movie. So you start out this movie with a young couple and they're moving and they hire these Chinese movers. They don't speak English, and the Chinese movers they load up the car and they're told to follow the couple, and they're following the couple and they're behind. So, their couple's in their nice Prius like we were, and the Chinese movers are behind, and the movers there's two of them, they're chatting with each other. And there's this moment in the film, in my head of this film, where you're looking between the two movers, they're talking to each other, and you see the Prius in front. And as the movers are talking to each other, you see the Prius pull away, and you see another Prius, identical in color, pull into the front. And then the movers, they stop talking, and the Prius takes off, and they follow the wrong car. The audience knows they're following the wrong car. And then we just spend the rest of the movie with the movers. Maybe they end up in Bakersfield. I don't know. I just thought that pleased me as a writing prompt. If you want to take it and run with it, do it. I've made it publicly available just now. There's another funny thing about DIY, specifically in San Francisco, because one of the most low-hanging fruits of DIY projects is putting up a shelf. Like going to IKEA, getting yourself a lack and socking it on the wall. I love me an IKEA lack shelf. In San Francisco, you have to be careful about leveling your shelves. Why, you might ask? Well, it's because you could go through all this careful work to put up a shelf and get your nice big level out, the level you've never dropped, so you know that it's true, and you put it on that shelf and you get it perfect, you get that bubble sitting right in the middle of the marks, and you screw that shelf in and you stand back and it looks like crap. And it looks like crap because no walls or ceilings in San Francisco are truly level. And so you have to double check level In San Francisco, level might not be level. Level might be a visual value rather than a bubble value. This is one of the first things I learned doing DIY in San Francisco is, yeah, you got to build the shelf to the wall, not necessarily to the level of the universe. Tenky says, in my younger years, my first job was to learn the ins and outs of working in a welding or machining shop. Mythbusters came out around that time and made me appreciate the chance I had to learn to work with serious tools, MIG welders, lathes, CO2 lasers, etc. That sounds like fun. Is there a career you would have explored or been curious about in a different life based on the type of work done there? Oh, yeah, there are all sorts of careers that I might have ended up in. On that front. One was magic illusions. At one point, between jobs in the late 90s, early aughts, I was between film jobs. And I was just thinking, like, what other industries use a wide range of weird skills? And I was like, magic! This is before I'd met Penn and Teller or before I knew any magicians for real. And I called up this place. I cold called this illusion designer in Las Vegas, and they were like, "Oh, we would totally hire you in a second. You just have to move to Las Vegas." Yeah, it's funny. That's definitely kind of the main one. The other one would have been theater. You know, I when I first got to San Francisco, when I matriculated into middle school, and there were plays. And they did The Sound of Music and the Canterville Ghost at Washington Irving Junior High School in 7th and 8th grade. And I got in the drama club and I found my people. And the drama club was so important to my emotional well-being for the next 5-6 years of school. And then when I moved to San Francisco, when I moved out here to San Francisco in 1990, the first job I did was actually doing bicycle messenger delivery for some pyramid scheme. I lasted 8 hours at that job. But then a friend of mine got me a job at George Coates Performance Works, which was an experimental theater utilizing a giant cathedral that was formerly hidden in the ground floor of the Hastings Law School building on Civic Center in San Francisco. And I ended up spending 5 years working for probably 20 different theaters around San Francisco. Project Artaud, the Eureka Theater, the Opera House, all over the place. I did dead hung houses, I did black box theaters, and there's totally a reality in which I would just have become a theater guy forever. It's just, I love the smell of a theater. I love a theater at night with just the ghost light on. I love being backstage and hearing the audience respond to stuff that's happening on stage. I'm a theater nerd deep in my bones. And I was working for Eureka Theater. Sorry, no, I was working for who is it out there? Berkeley Repertory Theater. I was working for Berkeley Repertory Theater. We were doing Woman Warrior, the first mounting of Maxine Hong Kingston's novel as a play, and it ended up touring around the country. And Woman Warrior includes some ghosts. Woman Warrior includes a lot of ghosts, and we made props that could be self-animated, a steamer that could sort of bounce its way across the stage, and some other pieces. And Jamie Heineman called me from Colossal Pictures. They were making special effects for commercials, not films, but commercials, and asked me to come in for an interview, and I did, and I started working for Jamie. And the thing was that in theater, I was well paid in theater in the early 90s, and I was making like 13 bucks an hour, tops. And Jamie hired me in commercial special effects, and my rate was he was paying me 17 an hour. So my income increased by like 30% overnight. And theater, I love ya, but that pay increase kind of meant that I never looked back. The money was too good in commercial and film special effects. But there is absolutely a reality. Like if I'd been in New York, which has a much deeper, career-based theater crowd than San Francisco does. And eventually I got into the same union that the theater tech workers work in, Local 16. I like thinking about those things. I don't do a lot of woulda, coulda, shoulda. I'm really pleased with how things are going. So I have to accept that all the things that happened between then and now are part and parcel of what I'm enjoying. But yeah. Let's see here.
Thank you for watching. I wanted to talk to you about Tested membership. The Tested members are a key community that we find really, really remarkable. That's very separate from Tested and from YouTube. The Tested members, they buy each other memberships during our live streams. So if you're wondering whether to become a member, watch one of our live streams and someone may just give you one. It is hard to overestimate how much the Tested members actually make possible on this channel. They give us a lot of wiggle room. They give us a huge amount of feedback.
That's a member right now.
Thank you so much for enjoying your membership. For everything you need to know. And for all the members out there, thank you, thank you, thank you.